But in philosophy, you ask why. Why does the world have to be this way? How could the world be this way? What does it mean for the world to be this way? What does it mean for the world for this to be the case? You ask a few of those questions, you get to the deep foundational questions. And philosophy is just what lies at the bottom of it all.
Like, I mean, you're doing history, and somebody comes along and says to you, well, I mean, you're just given an account, but that's not an explanation. What would it mean to explain the French Revolution as against just describing it? And you say, I don't know, I haven't thought about that. What is the difference between explaining and describing? So you get deeper and deeper into that. And finally, you're into these really fundamental questions that we usually take for granted. And that's philosophy.
The scientist will ask, what is the cause of cancer? But the philosopher will ask, well, what's cause anyway? What is for something to be a cause? What kind of a phenomenon is a causal phenomenon? What's a causal relation?
Philosophy is that discipline which wrestles with problems that are still in a state of too much confusion for any self-respecting science to try to grapple with them. We're the junkyard of the sciences, if you like.
For me, it seems that the philosopher is, in Locke's great phrase, an under-laborer to the rest of human culture and human science. And our task is to try to understand what's going on in various areas, to abstract from the detailed knowledge that the participants have, and to try to create a framework which makes sense of a much broader array of things than any one individual investigator or any one individual participant can actually make sense of.
I think that the role of the political philosopher in contemporary societies is, first of all, to try to identify or tease out the assumptions, the conventions, the unreflected assumptions that inform our public life, our political debates, and our ordinary judgments about public affairs, and then to subject those assumptions to critical reflection.
Well, I think if you look at issues like abortion, euthanasia, war, animal rights, you can see that there are very strong passions aroused. People have these very strong positions, but often the arguments aren't particularly well thought out. And as I see it, philosophers perfectly well can adopt a particular position and argue for it, but their prime function is to clarify what the arguments are.
Sometimes I think people believe it's rather naive on my part, but I have a tremendous belief in the power of rational argument to improve public life and also personal life. So I think what's great about the Greek philosophers is that they didn't just take philosophy for granted, but they had to really show people why it was important.
I think that philosophy is, from Socrates on, has been concerned with thinking carefully about how to live. Now, it's been concerned with a lot of other stuff too already. Plato began to be fascinated in philosophy of mathematics, which apparently he took 10 years off at one time to learn the new geometry, which had a big influence on all his thought, theory of knowledge, metaphysics, and so on. But I think that while philosophy can't be exclusively about how to live, it can't be just narrowed to, say, ethics, that combination of an interest in how to live and an interest in reasoning carefully about it, bringing together these two things that seem so different, close reasoning and a concern with man's place in the universe, the meaning of it all, how to live. This has to remain part of philosophy. I think that it is important for there to be such a thing as public philosophy. I think the public philosopher forces us to deepen our examination of the issues. I think today, especially in the age of the soundbite, in the age when tremendously powerful forces are trying to turn reasoning about public issues into a mockery, into simple manipulation by the media, the example of another kind of thinking, of serious reflective thinking, even which goes all the way to metaphysics, is terribly important.
If we try to understand the value of philosophy, by the values that govern or motivate other fields that are practical in their motivations. I think what we end up doing is we end up losing the intrinsic value of inquiry, the intrinsic value of wonder, the intrinsic value of asking questions and really wanting to pursue the answers and not being willing to take pat, standard, traditional, culturally given answers as the ultimate truth.
In physics, you don't read Newton. In philosophy, well, it incorporates its history. Philosophy is like this fixed four-dimensional object. In philosophers' minds, Plato is alive. What you're doing is taking part in trying to take part in a conversation where Plato's speech is there, Aristotle's reply, Augustine, Thomas, Descartes, Leibniz, Spinoza, Locke, Berkeley, Hume, and Kant, and you're trying to tack on the next bit of the conversation.